So, hello everyone. Yeah. I'd really like to see all of your consequences faces on this conference about startup nations. Can you clap for it, please? Yeah. So, what we're going to talk about today is going to be about how to live free in an unfree world, which the new technologies we can use to increase our free in the world, like, and how to make the people around you to be more consequent about the liberty and at all. So we'll make a fast schedule. What's going to be today? First, we're going to have 2 speakers. Then we're going to have a coffee break where you can take a short networking session with your neighbors. It's always useful. And then we're going to have 2 more neighbors. And the last going to be the Marian Zabolowski, which is a member of the parliament. So the first we get it up for Yanick Dols, which is a tech entrepreneur, and he have a lot of startups in the blockchain technologies. So get it up for Yanick Dols, please. Yeah.
Test. Yes. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Ukraina, Shedova, Ukraine. As stated before, I am Yanick Dols. My presentation is there, I see. Yeah, I myself have an engineering background, but after graduating, I immediately stepped into entrepreneurship. That is because for me, it was like the engineering part. I'm more of a, let's say, human engineer. I like to build the bridge between technology and society. And here you see some pictures of my daily life. I am blessed to be allowed to travel around the world and to speak on conferences, to spread ideas and to inspire people. And besides that, I'm still an engineer. So for instance, there in the corner, you see drones. One of my hobbies is like building my own drones and do a drone flying. So there's still an engineer inside of me. Yeah, here you see a big picture. You see me in the middle jumping from the air, because I was also part of building an innovation ecosystem in the southern of the Netherlands. I'm a Dutchie. And here, this was the first blockchain incubator in the Netherlands that we built. And this was after the first program. And it was really inspiring. And there was a lot of energy. And you see me flying like there. Then we go some years back, because when I was a kid, I was basically a gamer. I was spending too much time behind my computer. My mom did not like it, I can tell you that. And at that time I was like also quite good. I was third in the world in one of the games. But back then the esports scene was not so developed. Otherwise I would maybe not be standing here. Luckily that. But I was playing MMORPGs. So these are massive online worlds where basically it is a system, a model of society. And that always intrigued me because in this way you learn a lot about how certain dynamics in a society work. And actually what we have now with blockchain is we can create new systems that govern our society. So what I want to do today is help you first to give an introduction about the technology itself. I will go to give a short introduction, but the technology is very complex, so we don't stay too long there. Then I want to show you some examples, because yeah, it's all about the application. I think we all use the internet, but we probably don't know how the HTTP protocol or the SMTP protocol work. And after that, I will go much more into depth about certain ways that can create more freedom in society. I want to tell you, fasten your seatbelts. I use a lot of slides. I will tell you a lot of information, and it will go very fast. If there is something that you don't understand, please raise your hand. It can be in the middle, and I can answer that question. Here you see a picture, it's from a meetup. It's in January 2014. It was in our region the first meetup about cryptocurrencies. The technology behind it is blockchain. You see there, the group is very small. It's like it were only like nerds, engineers there. Because back then the technology was like only accessible via the command shell. It was very hard for people to understand. I myself came into touch with the technology in 2012. And it was Bitcoin, I think the most, let's say, common and known, let's say, application of blockchain. And I was interested in the technology immediately, not so much in the currency ID, but I saw this technology can create certain problems that I see in the world that as a kid, as a rebel, was always kicking against, but I could not come up with something better, so I stopped kicking. And that is basically where it all started. And as the engineer in me, I opened up my computer, started to mine. Back then, it was possible with your normal computer to mine. For instance, I did it for 2 weeks or something, like 0.3 Bitcoin. I stopped because the energy costs were higher than the Bitcoins were worth at that time. And you saw that in January it was $200, now we are around $10,000. But today we're not going to talk about speculation of worth. Today we're going to talk about a revolution. Because this technology can change certain systems as we know them today, but it takes a little time, and it takes all of you to participate and to think about how do we want to use this technology for the benefits of our own society. I believe that the impact of blockchain will be much bigger than the impact of internet. It will be not from today to tomorrow, but this has to do that if you look to the history of how we exchange data, the infrastructure, is that every time there was a progress, the complete infrastructure got replaced. So from the printing press to the radio to the internet to television to the internet, every time there was a technology advancement, the whole infrastructure got replaced. We saw all how big the impact of the internet was. If you look 10 years back and look now, we are locked to our phones. We use it every day, every hour probably. But now on top of this internet, we have the blockchain as an addition. And I always compare it like this. The internet is, if you compare it with the human body, it's like the blood vessels, it's like the nerve system that connect our body. And now, on top of that, we get a collective brain. We get a collective logic. And especially because it is an advancement of on top of it, the impact will be much bigger than the internet. So it's all cool in that. Now I want to learn you how to speak like the cool kids in blockchain terms. So the first will be the ledger. If you look, the ledger is something special within blockchain, because you can compare it like it's a mega Excel sheet that we share over the world, where all the transactions are being kept. And there is not one place, one bank or one place where this ledger is being kept. No, there are thousands of these ledgers with the same copy all around the world. But what is very special about this ledger is that you can only add transactions. So it's not like normally when you do, for instance, a wrong, let's say, bank transaction, they will cancel that and the transaction is out. No, you can only add transactions. On the other hand, also, is that all transactions are ordered chronologically in time. So every 20 minutes, for instance, within blockchain, there is a new block with all the transactions of the 20 minutes being added. And actually, the whole ledger is open, is public. So everybody can see all transactions. Everybody that has the ledger, that downloads the blockchain of Bitcoin, for instance, can see from its creation till today all the transactions. And this will give you also a lot of power if you look to the context, because you can see what these transactions done and where, and what kind of things are. On the other hand, people talk about anonymity. It's not completely anonymous. Bitcoin, to take that as an example, is pseudo-anonymous, because everybody can see every transaction. So there is, like, later on we will see the address of the accounts, let's say the bank account, and everybody can see that, but they don't know it's you. They only know the pseudonym, so the bank account number. So if they don't know that's your account, it's like anonymous, but if they know that. But later on we will tell a little bit more about that. And the next thing is like peer-to-peer decentralization. Because instead of having like a governed body, like a bank who takes control over this ledger, this is completely peer-to-peer and decentralized. So it means that all the transactions are being validated by the community, by you and I. Back in the days, I think all of you have probably downloaded a song via Napster or Kazaa, or used to download a movie with BitTorrent. These were the first applications of, let's say, peer-to-peer networks. Instead of downloading the song from a central server, you download from each other, you exchange with each other. And this is like also where blockchain technology is built on. In this way, it can also not be censored, because it's not like one server or one company they can take down. It's like peer-to-peer, so they need to take all the players, all the community down into effect if they want to take it down. And that's a hard job, especially with the currently activity and the use of so many users around the world. And then we have the word blockchain itself. Actually, the word says it itself. It's a big chain with all blocks. So what is a block? Now, if we take Bitcoin, every 20 minutes, all transactions are bundled and, let's say, cryptographically put together and added to the ledger. And they are all connected with each other chronologically. So they only fit in one piece, and they are connected in that way that only this block can connect to the other. And that's why basically the blockchain, the names come from, it's a big chain with all the blocks, and in the blocks are the transactions of, let's say, that time period. And then we have the wallet. And the wallet is basically like your bank account. So the nice thing about the wallet is that you are the owner. The wallet has two pieces. One is the public address. You could compare it to your bank account number. So if somebody wants to send you something, they need to have this account number so you can receive the Bitcoin or something else. And on the other hand, it has the private key. The private key is basically, let's say, the key to your vault. Because basically, you are your own bank. This also takes a lot of responsibility that you have, because now when you forget your password to log into your bank account, you will call the bank or whatever, and they can reset it. Here you can call nobody, so nobody can reset it for you. So you should take that into account. But luckily there are also wallet services online. So there is a third party, you could compare like a bank, who is providing the service for you to control your wallet. If you then lose your, let's say, password, you can do a password reset and you still have access to your funds. But there is something there, is that you have to trust this third party, because this third party has also access to your vault. So that's basically also, when you look to the idea of blockchain, it's basically that your own sovereignty access that is only for you and you control it, you then have to trust somebody else. It's a lot of time that people also say, yeah, but it's not safe and this and that. It has been hacked. The blockchain, for instance, Bitcoin, from day one, people are trying to hack it. And I can tell you the incentive is quite big. It's above 100 billion. So the incentive is there, but the blockchain from Bitcoin, for instance, has never been hacked. There has only been, let's say, third-party services like wallet services or like an exchange where you can exchange cryptos or exchange fiat to crypto that have been hacked. Because they are, let's say, a central point of failure and they can be hacked, and then it could be that they get access to the funds that they control. So within the wallets you have different types. I already mentioned, for instance, the online wallet service with a third party, but you also have the way of, let's say, a paper wallet, so you print one time and store it very carefully, like your private key somewhere. But the most safe way to basically store your cryptos is with a hardware wallet. Because every time when you do a transaction, you need to enter your private key to validate that transaction. And having it somewhere stored on your computer or typing it over, there is, let's say, a way that, for instance, a hacker is looking or somebody finds your private key and then immediately has access. So the safest way is a hardware wallet. This is a device that basically stores your private key in like a USB stick, and that one you use to sign basically your transactions. Inside the device there are other ways also to save. Also, when you lose your hardware wallet, it doesn't mean that you lose access to your account, because when you create the wallet, you will get like 24 words, which you have to store carefully, because with these 24 words, it's called a seed, you can restore your wallet. So when you choose to save somewhere your crypto or something, choose carefully and choose, let's say, the responsibility level as you want. Then there is something that makes, in my opinion, the blockchain very interesting. It's smart contracts. Smart contracts are actually not contracts, they are actually smart transactions. So basically what we can do now is that we can add programmable code to a transaction. So it means that the contract will execute itself by defined functions that we enter. Later on I will give you some examples about that, but that is what makes it very interesting. It's not only that we can do safe transactions, peer-to-peer without censorship, immutable. No, on top of that we also have a way to create automated transactions that do something automatically depending on real-world events or on other things. Later on there will be some examples to clarify that a little bit more. And then you have the way to generate applications on the blockchain. Now we go to our Play Store, to our Apple Store, download the application, but Google or Apple, they basically decide which applications you can download. So there is a way of censorship in there. And with a decentralized app, it basically is no one can censor it. So when it is in, let's say, applied on the blockchain, everybody can use it, and this app is unstoppable. This is basically, when you look to freedom, a way to create the freedom of choice about what applications you want to use. So it cannot be censored. And then we have the concept of mining, forging. Basically, to keep the blockchain safe, to keep this ledger updated, there are a lot of computers around the world who give their computing power to basically calculate very hard puzzles. Because every block that's being created cannot be created easily. There is a mathematical puzzle that needs to be solved. You cannot guess it, it's too hard to guess. So everybody is trying to compute and to calculate the answer of this puzzle. And when you, because there is also an incentive for them. Because every time, let's say, when you solve the puzzle, you will get a reward. We call it the block reward. At the moment, it's 12.5 Bitcoin. And in May 2020, it will go half. So In this way, the supply of Bitcoin is also limited. In the end, there will be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoin. And this way, it's the consensus algorithm proof of work. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of the, let's say, pessimistic people look at that. But I believe that this is currently, let's say, the innovation cost that we need to pay. And now at the moment, it's also dumb computing. But I foresee that one of the possibilities is that we stop using dumb computing, but we will use, let's say, for instance, to solve and calculate, let's say, the cell dividends or to fight cancer or something, that we use the computing power in a smart way. On the other hand, there are other consensus algorithm like proof of stake, where they are exploring with, because the technology is still in the early stage, there is still needs to be developed before it is ready for mass adoption. And what we also have now, and especially in 2007, we saw a big craze about new tokens being created, because besides Bitcoin, you have now more than 2,000 different other cryptos, tokens that are being created. These tokens are being used, for instance, for the application where the platform is developed for. So it's like a sub-economy. You could see it like when you fly with your airlines, you get the air miles, the frequent flyer miles that you collect. It's for that sub-economy. But there are different ways about how to create a new sub-economy to have your application being run and governed, and also have the economic token structure that it will work. And this is also something new, and later on I will give some examples about how these tokens can be used in an applicable way. And especially these tokens created a big surge, because in 2017, for instance, there was a big craze around ICOs. Initial coin offerings. So basically, it's a new way of fundraising projects, which is there to stay. It will probably get another name and another way about how it's done now. But basically, what people did was they had an idea. They would make a white paper, they would publish it, and then they would there was a token needed for that application for their ID. So they would sell their tokens that you could buy it as an investor, and in this way they raise money to create the product and to develop it. So it's a new way of fundraising, which is there to stay, but not in its current state. Also now a lot of government bodies like the SEC are looking into this because investors were not protected and so on. But this is actually a very interesting funding model, because you and I can also participate in the funding if we believe in the project, and we can become part of the community. Because now it's only for accredited investors and so on. It's not accessible for us. And actually for companies also, it's like they used to do an IPO, which has a lot of steps and money involved. But now basically somebody in Africa, in the middle of nowhere, can fundraise and raise money and doesn't have to go to Silicon Valley to be able to launch their product. So congratulations, now you're all master of blockchain, but still have no clue what we are doing. Let's stop talking about technology, because I myself already evolved a long time and I'm still learning every day. It's a very complex technology, but let's look to some applications. Oh yeah, one side note, for instance, a lot of people probably own Uber, know Uber, Booking, Airbnb, all very, in our opinion, innovative concepts, but in the long time they will disappear. Because how they make money is by monetizing the platform. They have the two sides of a community, and they bring them together as a middleman, and that's where they make their money, because they ask you money for that. In a way, this could be controlled decentralized, so basically the community directly peer-to-peer exchanges with each other without, let's say, the intermediary there. So this will move much more to a decentralized way. The wallet, I now want to go more deep into it, because the wallet is not only, let's say, if you look to Bitcoin like a currency or a money exchange. No, with this wallet you can do much more. You see much more people, for instance, wearing their Fitbit to calculate their steps and so on. It could be that we see that also as a way of a token that you can collect. So every step you make basically gets added to your own private wallet, and that you could maybe use, for instance, when you have to pay for your health insurance. So you can pay a part with it, let's say, providing them with the currency of every step, because they want to incentivize, let's say, healthy behavior. But also, like, when you participate as a volunteer, for instance, in organizing a conference like that, it could mean that this could be a transaction that is stored as a proof into your wallet. Or on top of that, maybe when you going to vote, that you can vote with your wallet to vote for your president or so on. When you write a review, or when you make a post, or when you need to sign a legally. These are all ways that can be done with our wallet in a secure way. Especially voting, of course, is a very good application of what blockchain can provide to society, especially a means of freedom. Of course, with voting, a lot of times there is the question, was there corruption or not? Did my vote take into account? Were there not votes added by somebody that is not being voted to rig the elections? I think in a much more, let's say, possibilities there are, is that that is a question that a lot of people have. And with blockchain, we can create a way that you can basically have this pseudo-anonymous way of voting, so your vote is taken into account, and with the certain frameworks around it, it can be, let's say, governed and controlled, and to make sure that regulatory-wise also everything is being done and fair. So basically compliance by design, so not afterwards showing we did everything like we did, what you see a lot afterwards, and still it can be rigged. No, you create a system that is compliant by design. Here it's also like, for instance, citizen engagement. I think that's also a very important one, is that now a lot of times, like, the municipality is deciding in this neighborhood this will happen. But if you give more participation of the citizens of that neighborhood, that they also have a say in, let's say, the decisions that are being made in their neighborhood, I think you also will see that the citizens will become much more participating in what happens around them, and will be much more involved. There will be much more acceptance of change, and you will get much more insights about what is really important for that neighborhood, that city, or that province. One other thing is that if you look now to society, we have let's say, a static way of pricing. 1 liter of oil, gasoline, has price X. But now blockchain will create dynamic pricing. So basically, with these smart contracts, we can, let's say, program the transaction that, for instance, when you look to the current climate problems and oil that's being used in there and having a bad influence on our climate, it could be, for instance, that when you use that 1 liter oil, that you have to pay for how you use it. Because when you look around the world, there is a limited supply of oil. So it's more about, okay, what do you do with that liter of oil? Then, oh, I buy 1 liter of oil for price X. So, to give you an example, when I drive in my car, and I drive like an insane, and I use that liter, like I use 1 liter of gasoline on 5 kilometers, it could be that I have to pay more for the liter of oil than, for instance, somebody else who uses that very ecologically and drives 25 kilometers with that same liter of oil. So the use, so we go to pay for use instead of pay for ownership of that 1 liter. So this could all be done by programming and having the communication of, let's say, the systems with each other that automate basically also these rules that we decide on, and this way this is possible. And on top of that, we live in a marketing society. Everything projected on us. For instance, when we go to book a vacation, it will be an amazing apartment with an amazing view. There will be a white beach, and it will be like clear water. But then you come there, and the hotel room is completely not about how they projected it on you, and the beach is like crowded, no white sand, no clear water. And basically with these smart contracts we could go to, let's say, pay for the fulfillment. So basically pay for what you get instead of pay for what is promised to you. A much easier example is the pizza courier who brings you the pizza, and he, for instance, says, I will deliver you the pizza for 10 euros within 30 minutes. If he actually comes within 30 minutes, you pay 10 euros, but if he comes after 45 minutes, it will be 7.50 euro. If it is after an hour, it will be 5 euros. So in this way, you automate the process to pay for what is promised to you and to be automated in the fulfillment. This can all be done via smart contracts. And we can step off to pay everything with money. Because there is a much more to it. Money is a social construct that we created as society to basically make trading more easy, but actually it took over a little bit our society, that it now becomes a goal, because everybody is accumulating as much wealth as possible. But there is much more being done around us. For instance, I go to a hotel, I have to pay 50 euros for that hotel room, but they say, oh, this is Yanick. Yanick has more than 23,000 people on LinkedIn, and these people are within our target group. So Yanick, you don't have to pay anything for your hotel room. You will pay if at the end of your visit you will make a post about how you found your stay in our hotel with a nice picture. Because they think smart, because if they have their marketing employee basically target this target group and put her to work to connect with these people, to attract them to come to the hotel, they would probably spend more than 50 euros. While if I post into my network, it's also not like advertisement more, but it's real like warm way about communicating. For them there is one thing, they need to make sure that I make a positive post, because that's also part, that's why I get a room for free. Afterwards I make the post, I really need to have a good experience, because I'm not going to tell to my friends and my network and make a lie, because then I would sell my soul. So that's also a way that we can step off, and also the idea about paying, for instance, with the steps, good behavior. We can create sub-economies to incentivize good behavior and to create a change, and also about how we trade and go much more to a barter economy. Also, one of the applications is, for instance, when we look to the food supply chain. Nowadays, organic, biological, it's all something that people are much more interested in, and people are willing to pay a lot more money for it. Actually, most of it is not organic, not biologic, because it's just marketing. and they just say it because it sells better. But if, also on the other hand, for instance, I don't eat white fish anymore because I know how it's being farmed with all the antibiotics and the bad circumstances for the animals. Because basically we say when you go to election we vote, but actually with every purchase is a vote you cost. And by creating the open and transparency in the supply chain, that you can see basically from the farmer till, let's say, you as consumer, every step, and know about the conditions, then you can make much more better decisions, and you can vote much better with a conscious mind about what you want to see in society. Because, for instance, the other one, the clothes you're wearing, do you know how they are produced? That the people in the factory have very good circumstances? Or the iPhone that you use, do you know that in the factory where the iPhone is being built, they have suicide nets around the factory to prevent people from committing suicide? I don't think these nets are there because they have such great working circumstances. And if you know much more about how a product is being produced, you can make a much more conscious decision about what you want to see in society. Now you don't know, you buy your clothes, and for instance, but you don't know about the circumstances. It could be that you're voting for bad behavior, child labor, and so on. But knowing every step in the supply chain, you can pay maybe a little bit more and to vote on something what you want to see in society. And then there is I like this example, it's connected nature. Because nowadays, only a person with a certain passport can have a bank account. But actually with the blockchain, everybody, everything, and even nature can become part of the economic system in the world. So we did, for instance, as a fun, a pilot with Staatsbosbeheer. It's in the Netherlands, is, let's say, a foundation that takes care of the forests, that, let's say, makes sure that they stay healthy and so on. And this foundation lives from government money, but on top of that also donations. Donations from you and I that are willing to give them money so they can do a better job and have more impact. So what we did basically was, in one forest, we put all the trees on the blockchain. So every tree gets his own wallet. So they're all, let's say, having a bank account. And people could donate via the app. They could, for instance, donate 10 euros. And then when they were going to walk in the forest, they would walk past all these trees. And since it was connected with the app and the phone, we know how they were walking. So what we basically did is do microtransactions to all the trees they pass. So every time they pass a tree, there would go like a microtransaction of 1 cent to the tree. And this tree was basically collecting money. But this tree was programmed with a smart contract that if he reaches enough money in his wallet, the tree itself would send out an order to the local tree planter to plant a new tree. So basically, the tree was involved in an economical, let's say, transaction. And of course, this is like a silly something, and it's just like experimenting into having fun to see about things that are possible, and especially since it's so crazy that a tree is participating in an economic transaction. But there, in this way, you can see that everything around us could be part of something. We could change the way about how we look to certain things. It could be that, for instance, now we pay when we own, when we rent an apartment, the owner or something, he pays for the gas, he pays for the electricity, he pays the rent at the end of the month. But it could also become that everything in the room is connected with each other, so you don't pay like rent, but it sees, okay, Yanick is there, Yanick is using that lamp, he's using that lamp, he's using that beamer, so I will make microtransactions for the use at that moment. So we can step away from ownership and go much more to use models in the economy. Because when we look back to society, is that for most of our history, our tribes were controlled decentralized. And this was because you can be decentralized, you can have a trustless system if the tribe is not more than like 110 people, because you know each other all. So you don't need a centralized way of control. But then agriculture came, and basically society the tribes became bigger. And in this way we needed a centralized way of control. And actually we did very well. If you look to how we adapted to it and what we created, especially when you look to supply chains, these are very extreme, complex, centralized systems. But now there is a new technology which can create a trustless system beyond, basically over the whole world. So we don't have this limitation to get a trustless system for a maximum of 110 people. So now it's time to rethink about what centralized systems we want to have more decentralized. To get back to basically how we always have been organized, and to also give back the power to the people, to create more freedom instead of being stuck with a certain institution and system. So that's something that I want all of you to give with. Start thinking about what is a system that is now being centralized that you actually want to have decentralized, where you want to be more in control together with the community about what happens there. Because we are getting a collective brain, a collective logic. And via this we can see also much more about all these transactions, the impact of it. So if you look, for instance, to war, now the countries go to war, it could be for oil, it could be for many reasons. They go there, they take everything, because there is no way of having accountability. There's no way of having traceability. But if all of this happens and it's being, let's say, transacted in a big ledger that you can see the contacts, I think people would act much more of good behavior. They would be much more accountable and responsible about the impact they're making in the long run. What is also very interesting is that besides blockchain, because blockchain is just a technology, I hope the words will disappear very fast and we will just talk about the applications of it. But now we are in a time with a lot of technologies that are very interesting. Here are 10 being mentioned. And especially blockchain will, let's say, act as an enabler, for instance, with big data, with artificial intelligence. But also like creating much more decentralized way of production with 3D printing, additive manufacturing, or create much more connectivity and decentralize, for instance, telecom. For that we need the combination of IoT, so Internet of Things, with connected devices and 5G, so we can get a really, let's say, peer-to-peer network that can decentralize telecom and provide us with really uncensorable communication. But also the concept of robots that will take over the means of production, that we can much more focus on what is really important. But we need to also think about new ways about our economic constructs. Because in the end now it's about basically how it is created is that the most tax you pay is on income. Which for me is kind of strange. So companies are more, let's say, put on a higher level than we as humans, while I believe that companies are being created to provide us with services. And then on the income you get is where you pay the most taxes from. And how it's being used, you don't have control except in 4 or 5 years every time you're voting. So for instance, I am a pacifist. I don't want to have, let's say, money being spent on war. But every time I pay taxes, I'm also paying for the military. Or I don't have a lot of influence. Well, this is my biggest, basically, cost. If I look to the money that comes into, and I pay 50% taxes over that. So we can create much other governance systems and move away to the end of ownership. So now it's something you see people with a lot of money, for instance, they buy real estate and they rent it out, and this way they can have a reoccurring way of revenue because they own it. So basically it's like creating a zero-sum game in our society, you against me, instead of a cooperative way where we can combine and look what is better for society. Because now we are in an interesting time, because we can add in economic way, in governance structure, not only people, but also organizations. To give you an idea, it's far away from being really used, but there is, for instance, a decentralized autonomous organization. So that means basically that there is no central way of control. The organization is being owned, controlled and governed by society and by the community. We need a lot more experiments. We need much more of you to participate in the way about how do we want to create these new governance structures to create a much more free and sovereign world. Because we are, let's say, we have the technology, we have it around us to move, to be more autonomous, to be more sovereign, to be more mutualistic, instead of living in a zero-sum society. I hope we are moving much more to, let's say, organizations that are profit-driven, that are experimenting, that are that are much more transparent about what they do, instead of always competing against each other. To give you an idea, when you look to IP, it's basically limiting innovation. It's limiting the good for our society, because that company controls the IP. Look to the pharmaceutical industry. They own it. They can produce the medicine for $5, but they sell it for $5,000 because they need to make profit. But in the end, then a lot of people that are sick cannot get the medicine because they cannot afford it. And also, when I have an idea and I share it with somebody else had also that idea and can add something from them to it. But when I have $1 and I give it to somebody else, I don't have the dollar, only the other person has the dollar. So basically also IP is currently limiting the innovation power and the, let's say, the impact and growth of our whole society. So we can move away from hierarchy, so centralized controlled system, to a we-archy. We are together. And this is blockchain is one of the building blocks in that. And we have now Web 2.0, but we're moving to Web 3.0. So basically everything becomes decentralized. And now at the right side, you see, for instance, let's say the building blocks that are needed to create this new internet. They're not perfect yet. They are still being built. To give you one example, it could be like file storage. Now it's being stored on one server at one place. But there is one project, it's also beyond the Earth. It's interplanetary file system. What they do is create a basic peer-to-peer, let's say, way of data sharing. Because actually, when you look to the hard drives around the world, more than 60% of the hard drives is not being used. So also we can enable the use of resources that we already have and, let's say, open them up in a new way. So basically blockchain can enable that if you have, let's say, too much resources, you can share and open it up to society. And this is all being done by tokens, these sub-economies that we started with. The tokens are the fuel of the decentralized economy. But for these tokens, we need to have good incentives. So I want you all to start thinking about what kind of incentive can you create for certain goals that you want to see in society, certain changes. So how can we incentivize the behavior that you want to see? One of my passionate things is zero profit organizations. Zero profit organizations is a new way of creating organizations that are controlled, funded, maintained, and being owned and used by the community. So basically, the profit does not go to an organization or a person. No, the profit stays in the ecosystem and the purpose of that organization. And I will give you one example. It's about a mobility project that I'm involved in. And the mobility project is about one-person vehicles, one-person pods. It's for urban mobility. So it's basically like Uber, let's say in Kyiv, that you used for the taxi, but then it's not a taxi driver with a car that is coming, but it is a pod that comes, a self-driving pod, and this pod, you click on the button, it will come just like Uber, you step in, it will bring you, you step out, and you pay with the token for mobility of that pod, for that sub-ecosystem. And that pod is has his own bank account, is his own entity, every separate vehicle, and it collects the token, and then it needs to be charged. So it sends out to the community. It sends out, I want to be charged, I will pay you this amount of tokens. I want to be cleaned, I give you this amount of tokens. And in this way, the pod is basically in the ecosystem acting on itself, and it's collecting money. So also by these actions, it creates local employment. Also with the creation, the manufacturing of the pod, it also creates local employment, because it is being produced with open source and open hardware, so it will be produced in a container as big as you need. It will be 3D printed and put together. Somebody can also make money on that, so also act in that system. So it creates also in the manufacturing. It will create local employment. And on top of that, the money that it profits, it will not go to an organization or a person. No, when he has enough money in his wallet, he will reproduce himself, he will make a baby, he will send out an order for a new pod to be created. And in this way, the money stays circular in the ecosystem, in the goal that the zero profit organization has. And this is, of course, a complete new way about how to create infrastructure. An infrastructure that is much more, let's say, instrument to the society, and it's much more, you can compare it to nature, because it will exist when it is relative, but it will also die like in nature when it's irrelevant, and it will be replaced by something new. So this is about mobility, but think about social welfare or education. And there are also ways, or let's say, the growth of vegetables that you can share in a community all together. And there are also some plans that we are working on. So it's time for freedom. It's time to get more of this sovereignty, more of you to get more into control about what happens around you, to have less government, and to have less involvement of big corporations, and to start thinking about how do we want to see certain things? Because there is one other thing that scares me a little. It's about when you look, we live in a surveillance state, but not so much by the state only, also by big corporations. Because Facebook, Google, they know much more about you than you know about yourself, because they collect all the data. And you think that you are, let's say, using a free product. No, you are the product. And they are tracking everything around you about what you do. You're collecting your complete digital footprint and using that to sell you more, to consume more, and to influence you, to put you in ecological, into echo chambers about what you hear, what you want to hear, and not see the bigger of it. It's being used to rig elections, to basically implement you with ideas that they want you to think. And that needs to move away, and especially blockchain can play an important role in that we get back our data sovereignty, that we control our data, and that we choose with who we share this data, and that we are not the product. Because it's very important that our, let's say, online identity is safe, that we can interact online. On the other hand, e-government is one of the things where a lot of advancements can happen, that you can be much more an active citizen and controlling what happens. So when I look in this room, I hope I see a lot of time travelers, that I see a lot of people that want to add something in the future to our freedom, that want to make the society move forward, that we have more sovereignty and all together. So I want to ask you all, be the crazy one, because you have to be a little crazy to be that time traveler. And I want to thank you all for the attention. Be the crazy one and move to more freedom.